Okay, we're set.
And we are live.
Ladies and gentlemen, braće i sestro, good day, good morning, good afternoon, where you are. I'm Branko Terzić. It's my honor to have as the guest at the Serbian American Leadership Conference Leaders video series, His Royal Highness Crown Prince Alexander of Serbia. Before we interview the Prince, I'd like to introduce the President of the Serbian American Leadership Conference, Mr. Alex Đurišić. Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Terzic. Your Royal Highness, Mr. Terzic, and all those watching, Christos Vaskrse, Vaistinu Vaskrse, Christ is risen, indeed he is risen. Your Royal Highness and Mr. Terzic, thank you both for joining SALC and the entire Serbian nation today. I must admit, I feel slightly out of place being in the same discussion with the two of you, but your statures and prominence are inspiring to me, and I pray to be able to have even half of the influence that you both have had on Serbian society, culture, and the Serbian people in the future. First, thank you, Your Royal Highness, for the way that you represent the Serbian people with class and honor throughout the world. Thank you for your dedication to improving the lives of the Serbian people, particularly through your humanitarian work, and the work you and Crown Princess Catherine have done to improve the healthcare system in Serbia. We saw your dedication to Serbia most recently in your work to combat the COVID-19 pandemic in Serbia, and for that, we are all grateful. This is an incredibly important discussion for us to have because it provides a new generation of Serbian Americans the opportunity to meet you and hear about all the outstanding work that the royal family does for us. It's also fitting that you are joining us during our celebration of the resurrection of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. This is a moment in Serbian history that has a certain feeling. It's a moment where undoubtedly Serbia is on the eve of resurrecting itself, along with the Serbian people and the Serbian spirit. That same spirit instilled in us by the greatest of Serbian leaders and heroes, Karađorđe. It is through this spirit that SALC does all of its work. As Karađorđe was faced with what seemed insurmountable circumstances during the first Serbian uprising, his spirit and leadership overcame all obstacles in leading to the resurrection of the Serbian state. As we do our work as SALC to inspire a new generation of Serbian American civic engagement, as we raise awareness about the issues we face to our representatives and government officials, and as we seek to unite the Serbian American community after a period of apathy and disenchantment, we are guided by that spirit ingrained in our people by the sacrifice of Karađorđe and your ancestors from the Karađorđević dynasty. We're optimistic that through the work of the royal family, SALC, and Serbians across the world, that we will restore Serbia to its rightful place in the community of the nations, and with that, the Karađorđević family to its rightful place in Serbian society and culture. Thank you, Chuka Branko.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, His Royal Highness Crown Prince Alexander's biography is available on the website, which should be showing on your screen. If not, it's www.royalfamily.org or alternatively www.royal.rs. RS is the code for the Republic of Serbia. Since his biography is available there, I'm not going to go into it in great detail. However, in fairness, I should point out His Royal Highness Crown Prince Alexander is the only child and son of His Majesty King Peter II of Yugoslavia and Queen Alexandra of Yugoslavia, who was previously Princess Alexandra of the Hellenes. On both sides, Crown Prince Alexander's grandparents were King Alexander of Yugoslavia, and on his mother's side, King Alexander of the Hellenes. And so His Royal Highness has two monarchs as his grandparents. His godparents, he was born in London. We might get into that a little bit later, but his godparents were at that time King George VI of the United Kingdom, as well as King George's daughter, then Her Royal Highness Princess Elizabeth, now Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom. Crown Prince Alexander is internationally educated. I would point out he was a career soldier, a graduate of the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst, and following that has an extensive career in business, which we're going to talk about a little bit because I want to get some of his insights and some of his experience. In truth, in advertising and packaging, many of you are aware. If you're not, I should inform the public that I have been Prince Alexander's adjutant for 43 years, and he's been my coom, was best man at our wedding 42 years ago. So this will be a friendly interview, hopefully a conversation among friends. Your Royal Highness, how have you and Crown Princess Catherine been doing in Belgrade during this COVID-19 quarantine?
Well, first of all, I'd say thank you so much for this great opportunity joining SALC. And I'd like to greet all the members of this illustrious organization from Belgrade, live thanks to technology on Skype. We're here in Belgrade. But Branko, thank you very much for the question. What an extraordinary situation we're in. My wife and I are in the palace on our own, and we have a complete system set up here how to continue daily life. We get supplies of food, we get help if we need it. We're protected by a complete police unit because there are two palaces that have very important contents, and we take twice daily walks in the compound. We've been pretty active, both of us, because the situation is serious, like everywhere else, like in the United States, of course. The president here and the prime minister have imposed certain rules. We follow these rules. And of course, we wish to praise the heroes that we have. And they're the doctors, the nurses, and all the medical staff in our hospitals who are doing an amazing job saving lives. My wife has been very active in supplying specialized equipment and appealing for more help. For example, she got a call from the clinic of Serbia desperately needing laptops, and she managed to get 30 laptops and 20 printers. And there have been other things like that, quite remarkable. We remain in touch with everybody using this technology, using WhatsApp. We also use Vonage. And when we are in downtime, we also have the technology of watching Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Apple. So that's our daily life. We've been very lucky here with amazing weather, which has been positive and brought our spirits up. But recently we had a lot of snow, and the last few days we had temperatures in Fahrenheit in the 70s, and it's been superb.
Very good. Your Highness, as the SALC is made up of young professionals here in the United States, can you share some of the experiences you've had in your business career? I know you've done business in Rio de Janeiro and Chicago, Washington, D.C., London. Of course, now you're in Belgrade.
Well, I've had a diverse sort of life. After I left the army, my first job was in advertising, and that was with Ogilvy Mather. It was a company called, very strange name, Standard Propaganda, in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. But I spent time in Brazil. I also spent time in London and New York. And of course, the founder of Ogilvy and Mather was Ogilvy himself, who was a great man. And my wife and I were his guests at his castle, chateau, as one might put it in France. And we learned a lot from him. He was a sort of father of modern advertising. And the most famous thing he did was a spot for Rolls-Royce. He said the most loudest thing you can hear in the car is the clock. But he was the sort of guide in what we did. I then changed careers and went into insurance, also in Rio, and then to Chicago with Marsh McLennan, a division called William M. Mercer. And I spent 5 years in Chicago. And this was the beginning of using technology for business. We were using basic programs at the time, but I was working for the American Medical Association members, for example, and many other associations, designing and maintaining insurance programs, major medicals and things like that. And the technology was really very useful. And of course, nowadays it would be very primitive, but today things have changed a lot. I then left Chicago after 5 years there, and I'm sure the winters were much colder then, to Washington, to live in Virginia. And I joined a competing firm called Fred S. James, which then became part of Transamerica, and then moved to London with their insurance broker, a very famous old one called Wigan Poland. And I worked in aviation, I worked in financial services, and many other areas. But doing this sort of job in Brazil, London, New York, Washington, and elsewhere, I did meet the most extraordinary people you can imagine. Later on, I had the pleasure of meeting Bill Gates. We were his guests in Seattle, and it was fascinating talking to this gentleman. And of course, we greatly admire what him and his wife do for charity. But I'll never forget an amusing episode. My wife was learning how to use computers, and she said to Bill, I'm sorry, I don't even know what a mouse is. So that was a funny thing. And we maintained the friendship there. And of course, here in Belgrade, we've had all sorts of extraordinary people coming to see us. There's a whole list of people. And we maintained.
All right, just a moment. We've lost the signal there.
And mineral water, and many other businesses. It's great living in this compound. We have 2 palaces here. This interview is being done from the Royal Palace, the first one built, finished in 1929. And we use this place to promote Serbia and to have and to also do our charities here and things like that. But I've spoken too much. I think, Branko, you may have some other questions.
I did want to ask, you're sitting in King Alexander, your office, but that is the office that King Alexander used. Is that correct? We can see the books behind you.
Yes, this was King Alexander's office. He lived downtown in the new palace, and his desire was to build a palace outside of the town, outside the city. He bought land in Denine on the highest spot of the hill, the highest hill, and this palace is quite magnificent. Its style is a bit of Byzantine, Serbian, and it has a Russian style. One of the main architects was, of course, Krasnov from Russia, a famous architect. This office was the king's office, and it's a magnificent office. It has a great collection of books. We also have the library, which is the room right behind me, but there were some 50,000 books before the Second World War here, and most of them walked out and disappeared here and there, or shall we say they were stolen. But still, this office has some extraordinary books, some amazing dictionaries, encyclopedias, and also some incredible art.
Yeah, very good. Your Royal Highness, during the past 50 years, both in your business career and now as being what we would call the first citizen of Serbia, you've met many world leaders and shared experiences. Can you share a little bit of some of the leaders that you've met? I know you've met the Prime Minister de Klerk, Putin, Trump, Kofi Annan, and others. And could you share a little bit of your insights there?
Well, it's so important to make friends. Of course, you may disagree with some things that they do or say, but making friends is what makes the world go around. Connections. Without connections, there's no future. So I strongly recommend, humbly, that people make friends, make contacts, and maintain them. And when it comes to a religious festival or a birthday, to send them congratulations and to keep in touch. Yes, I've had the pleasure of meeting all the Secretary Generals of the United Nations and going to visit them in the United Nations in New York. Had some amazing conversations with them. You mentioned President de Klerk, which was really a fascinating friend. We've been to 2 of his birthdays, the 70th and 80th birthday, and we had the pleasure of meeting Nelson Mandela and having great conversations with him. I admired him very much. He was a great leader. But one learned a lot going to these birthdays and discussing what happened to them. And of course, they would ask, what happened to us? And us, it was quite a strange story. I was only 2 years old when everything collapsed for me. I became an enemy of the state of the Communist Federation of Yugoslavia. It must have been very dangerous to achieve that. And this was, of course, removed not too long ago. And we're still working on restitution and getting amends put in order, which is a big job.
Yeah, so on the restitution question, none of the property has been returned to you and your family, even though in the 1938 court ruling disposing of the assets, the normal court proceeding after somebody dies, there was a very detailed inventory of what property belonged to the late king and what property belonged to the state. So that inventory is available, and it's on the basis of that it should be returned. Is that correct?
Well, it should be returned because it's a human rights violation. I should say that King Alexander bought property thanks to investment in 3 gold mines and shares in the United States, for example, Woolworths, U.S. railroads, and things like that. So everything that he bought came from private income. And we can prove that. Where I'm sitting now in the Royal Palace, he paid taxes on this Royal Palace. Normally you pay taxes if it's private property. Now this was recognized in court rulings here, but then it was not implemented by the authorities in returning a tremendous amount of property, not only in Serbia, but in other republics, former republics of Yugoslavia, particularly Montenegro and, of course, Slovenia, and there's a few places in Croatia. But the main areas are Serbia, Croatia, main areas are Serbia, Slovenia, and Montenegro. Nothing has been returned. The only thing that I ever got back was when I was stationed in Germany with the British Army. I used to patrol the East German border, and there was a border police gentleman who was very nice, who invited me to have a cup of coffee with him and to meet his father. And his father came to the coffee house with a bag. And he said, "I must apologize. I would like to return this to you. This is a book I stole when I was occupying your father's palace." That is the only item that was restituted to me.
So it was a German soldier.
Yes, that's extraordinary.
What an extraordinary story that is. Good Lord. Your Royal Highness, right now the whole world economy is in a decline. What was your opinion of Serbia's economy right before this, and do you think they'll be able to respond rather quickly, to bounce back rather quickly?
Well, from the 5th of October 2000, which was our, as I may put it, velvet revolution to get rid of the reins of the past, to now, this government has provided the most economic advances that we have seen. We have been growing at 3% GDP, which is quite remarkable. And you could witness this. You could look across Belgrade, and there are construction cranes that we've never seen before. Also, driving around Serbia, there's expressways, or should I say toll roads, amazing toll roads, more than our neighbors. More investments have come in, and of course, we are part of more contacts, particularly with the European Union. The United States has been a very big investor. Doesn't do distant neighbors like Germany, like France, like other European Union members, Italy, have come here. I've hosted conferences here at the palace with ambassadors. One of the famous ambassadors was an Italian ambassador who brought here twice business people from all over Italy, 80, 90 at a time, and that was very successful. So we're a sort of magnet for this. And the government of Serbia recognizes this, and also traveling abroad, we do represent Serbia in sort of providing a sort of public relations effort in attracting investors here and trying to answer their questions, and then welcoming them in the palace and wining and dining them and setting them off in the right direction.
Excellent. Your Royal Highness, you have a number of foundations with different purposes. One of them, can you tell us about your education foundation, the scholarships, and the resume writing that you brought into the country?
Yes, my foundation for education It's a very good one in the sense that it brings together every year, at the end of June, the graduates of the 600 high schools from Serbia and Republika Srpska. And these young men and women are the cream of our students, and they come here with their parents, their guardians, to the White Palace. And in the end, we have 1,800 people. And we recognize their academic work and their achievements by giving them diplomas, by giving them books, introducing them to further education. Our plan is that they go to universities and continue their work. We're very proud to have an American sponsor, NCR, who are very active here in Belgrade, who are building a new headquarters. NCR has been our sponsor for the last 3 years, and we hope that they will continue. We also help them, you mentioned resumes, how to write a resume, how to talk to a person who's interviewing you, and things like that. We also got scholarships. One of the most amazing scholarships that we got was from Nottingham University in the United Kingdom. We got 30 scholarships, masters from there, and all the students came back to Serbia. We also had scholarships from the United States, from Switzerland, and France.
That is really, really remarkable, and we're so pleased that you have extensively been visiting on your health. You've extensively been visiting all the time you're there, the various hospitals, starting with when you and the princess first arrived. You discovered, and she discovered, there was a lack of, what was it, incubators. And so the attention to medical facilities is not a pandemic driven. This has been your last more than a decade. Is that correct?
Yes, my wife has been involved some 27 years. Her first program was helping the children's hospital here, Tiršova, with equipment in the 1990s. Which was desperately needed. But she formed lifeline humanitarian organizations abroad, namely Chicago, New York, Toronto, London, and Athens. And when we came to live here in 2001, she opened an office here called Princess Catherine Foundation, which coordinates with all the other offices abroad. We're proud of our diaspora being significant donors. They have supported us. We're also very proud of all our foreign friends who've come to love Serbia, who've come to visit us in Serbia, and even stay with us. We've been extremely active in raising funds with events in these cities, and there are events every year, namely in Chicago, Toronto, in London, and of course in Athens. The events are quite spectacular, and we always have fun memories of meeting everybody. When we go to these events, we also make friends with the people of each city, and we've met mayors, we've met congressmen, senators, and so on. It's absolutely amazing making friends, and then you invite them to come to Serbia, and they've always enjoyed their visit here, and many of them even come back. We're great hosts in Serbia, and we're very proud to take care of everybody that come here, regardless of their ethnic origin or their religious foundation.
Your Royal Highness, you mentioned earlier that the members of the SALC should reach out to people even if they don't have the same opinion, for example, slightly different political view or different religion. You yourself practice that because you have a ecumenical luncheon for your Slava. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yes, it's very important. We should note that Serbia is multi-ethnic and multi-religious. There was no ethnic cleansing in Serbia, contrary to in neighboring areas. It's very important that we respect all citizens, regardless of their religious beliefs, regardless of their political affiliation. And we come together in the sense of promoting Serbia. We're not here to fight or kill everybody. We're here to make friends and make friends with our neighbors. We need neighbors to sell goods. Without neighbors, you won't be able to sell anything. You'll be like in an island in the middle of the Pacific. Serbia is part of Europe, and Serbia's intention is to be a member of the European Union. Of course, we're looking at it with an open mind now, difficult one, but we do need friends abroad. Without friends abroad, we'll never be able to market our goods. And these friends are very important for the progress of Serbia, and they are the investors in creating jobs in Serbia. Remember, we're not an island in the middle of the Pacific. We're here to entertain the world.
Your Royal Highness, you've had, since you've been there, very extensive interviews, television, newspapers. How is your relationship with the press at this time?
We've had a very good relationship. However, there are some tabloids who have taken too much liberty. I'm certain we will have stronger laws in suing such tabloids who are doing themselves and our country great disservice. But in general, our relationship with the media has been good, with the state media too. There's been some fascinating interviews. And of course, we also promote history. We also have every few months exhibitions here in both palaces, the Royal Palace and the White Palace, promoting history, promoting art, promoting culture in general.
The compound that you're at, I forget how many acres it is. It's a large compound, and it was closed to anybody except Tito, and you're the only one that's opened it to the public. Can you tell us about opening it and how the public can come to the compound in normal circumstances?
Yes, you're absolutely right. It was completely closed. It was the Forbidden City. It has 300 acres. It's big, 2 palaces, and of course there are buildings in the compound, which are garages and administrative buildings, and there's a building right in the entrance as you come in. Thanks to an agreement which was done, what was Yugoslavia then, which consisted of Serbia and Montenegro, an agreement was made that I was allowed to come and live here and also open the palace for the first time to tourism. We worked hard on making the place available and look good for tourists. We have over 100,000 tourists a year. We're open to students and pensioners as free visitors. We interact with the boats that go up and down the Danube. It's amazing how many cruises there are, but we have boats that come here 100 at a time who enjoy very much their tour. And then we give them refreshments and they're allowed to ask questions. We also have a large amount of tourists from abroad that come here by bus, that come here by aircraft. We have everything. And so this compound is a great attraction for Serbia, and the government helps us with that with 2 organizations, the Tourist Organization of Belgrade, TOB, and TOS, the Tour Organization of Serbia. And we also have brochures, we have videos. It works very, very well. Of course, now we can't have anybody, but we can't wait to open it again and continue this service of promoting Serbia using this compound for the good of Serbia.
Your Royal Highness, I understand the facilities have also been used in television and the movies. I saw a recent episode of on CBS of The Seals, in which they used the White Palace. Is that a more regular thing now?
Yes, we're open for movies or for series. We've had some fascinating series here. We're also working on a series on King Alexander, for example, King Peter I. We're open for cinema people, and they love it because we take good care of them, and they've come back. We were going to do some more filming now, but with Corona virus, unfortunately, we had to postpone it. But I'm certain once this is over, this will start again. Of course, this also helps our budget, which is so important to do the repairs. It's a big compound, and there are constant repairs. And it has to supplement the state budget. So everybody's welcome to come back filming.
Yes, there's another facility, another famous site related to your family, the Royal Mausoleum and the grounds at Oplenac. Can you tell us a little bit about the size of that facility, what's there, and your relationship to it?
I'm very proud of Oplenac. It's a foundation of King Peter I. He set this up, and the idea was to build a church there and to have the mausoleum for the family. And King Alexander continued this project. And of course, during the dictatorships here, It was not used. We then continued it very much so after the October Revolution of 2000 and most recently we had a state funeral there for my father and family members. I was so proud that the government, who I worked with closely at the time, it was with President Nikolic, Prime Minister Dačić, and other members of the administration, to bring back the remains of my family, and they provided every help possible, and they helped us with a state funeral. Oplenac is rather like Arlington Cemetery, as you might say. So my father was, of course, very happy to be buried at Libertyville, but we became democratic to the best of its sense, and there was nothing stopping bringing back members of the family here and having a state funeral at Oplenac, where many dignitaries came from abroad and the whole government attended.
So the facilities there include not only the church. I understand there's a vineyard there, and nearby is the ancestral home of Karađorđević. So it'd be similar to Mount Vernon, where George Washington is buried, for example.
Very similar. Yes, it was Karađorđević's home. It's a cognac. It's a very small house, but it's maintained as a museum. It's a beautiful museum with a lot of the art of Karađorđević. Also, there is opposite the church, the mausoleum, there is a house that King Peter used as his residence, and that's become a fascinating museum with many, many important artifacts, and it's extremely popular. Whenever we go there, we find many visitors, thousands of visitors that we intermingle with.
I want to go back a little bit to the state funeral. When your father died, the country was a communist country. They would not allow him to be buried there. So the only choice was either Chicago or in England. And I believe he did not wish to be buried in England specifically.
Well, I must admit, I must have been about 19, 20. And he was talking about Oplenac. He was telling me about Oplenac, how much he loved it. And he said, if anything ever happens to me, it's Oplenac. I like to go to Oplenac. And I'll never forget that. That was his desire. No Libertyville, Oplenac. Serbia, not Arlington, Serbia. And that was his desire. And it's perfectly normal. Now, I visited him in Los Angeles in 1970, and he was in a coma. And then I was a bit horrified what happened thereafter, because I went to see the Queen, thinking the best thing I could do is bury my father next to his mother, Queen Maria, who we all loved. Queen Maria was buried right in front of the mausoleum of Queen Victoria, the great grandmama of Europe. And the Queen said, of course you can do that, but I think you're going to have some trouble. Those days, the 1970s, was very complex for the Serbian diaspora. Tragically, there was a split in the church, and you had families that were desperately separated or fighting each other. A great tragedy. A lot of time and money was spent defending each side, and even went to the Supreme Court of the United States. I hope those days will never repeat. I think we're very lucky today that we all recognize our patriarch as the head of our church, and then when this all finished, this terrible situation between a diaspora church and a mother church, Patriarch Pavle became the unifying factor of the church, and this is continued by Patriarch Irene. Those days are over. The church is totally free here, and the state supports the church very, very much.
I'd like to go back to Queen Elizabeth and the British royal family. Your Royal Highness, when we first met, we were both, I think, teenagers or around that age. But at that time, I believe you were sixth or seventh in line, quite high up in the British line of succession because of your ancestral relationship with Queen Victoria. What has been your relationship with Queen Elizabeth over the last half century as your godmother?
Well, Branko, I don't think I was at a dizzy height of 6 or 7. There were many children that were born, so I got further and further away. But I've always maintained a very close relationship with my godmother. She's been very good to me. And when we're in London, we do try and see her. We have meals with her. We've attended all the royal events. We've attended the Jubilee. We've attended, sadly, funerals. We've attended weddings. And this friendship, of course, will last. We're admirers of her. She's a great states person, and we've learned a lot from her. And of course, it's been difficult at times, particularly during the criminal bombing of Serbia, when unfortunately the United Kingdom was a member of this act, which hurt our people. But the friendship has always been there, and it will be forever.
And vice versa, the Queen, of course, attended your 50th birthday, which was held in the hotel in London where you were born, Claridge's, where Winston Churchill had a particular role in that. Would you like to tell us about that a little bit?
Yes, I was oddly enough born in a hotel, and that was the plan. And my father had approached Winston Churchill, and Winston Churchill told the Secretary of the Interior, the Home Secretary of the United Kingdom, that at the time of my birth, it should be turned into Yugoslav territory, which they so well did. So I was born on a small patch of Yugoslav territory. So many years later, in February 2001, the Minister of the Interior of Yugoslavia came to London and gave us our citizenship back in that actual, which was a very moving ceremony, and I was very emotional. So we did a full circle.
So to clarify for the audience, the hotel room became the equivalent of an embassy property, and embassy properties belong to the country that they represent. Yes. So it became an extension that way.
Well, the act of birth, that's all. Yeah. There's no longer that, but there's a plaque there, and it's in the sort of bio of the hotel. And of course, every time we go back to the hotel, they take good care of us. The only thing is they give us the bill now.
Very good. Mentioning the royal family again, you're a contemporary of Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales, and you even attended some of the same schools and are related through the Greek side.
Yes, that's correct. Prince Charles was at Gordonston where I was. He was 3 years younger than I was, but we were there at the same time. And also, I attended his wedding, both weddings. We maintained close friendship. He came to see us here in Belgrade, which he enjoyed very much. We also knew very well Princess Diana. We know the Duchess of Cornwall. We're very close, and we maintain contact with each other. When we're in London, we'd make an effort to see each other. He's been a very good friend, and of course he's helped my wife's charity, which was very kind of him and very generous.
But you're also related to the Queen's consort, yes. Prince Philip, through your Greek royal family.
Cousin, and they're both cousins. You're absolutely right, from the Greek side. Yeah. So it's quite complicated, all these royal families of Europe. I always put it's like a big minestrone soup.
Very good. To go back a little bit, can you tell us about your first days in the palace? I know it was quite traumatic for you, looking around, finding this was the home of your grandfather, the home your father was not able to return to. Could you share with us a little of that insight?
Well, it was extremely emotional, very emotional. My wife keeps telling me that I was in tears. I would sit on a chair and say, do you think my father or grandfather sat in this chair? Do you think they were looking at this and that? And there were, as I mentioned, there were two palaces. So she said, which palace we're going to live in? And I said, well, my father said the one, which is the most important one, is the Royal Palace, where we are now. And we came here, they gave us the keys, and then we said goodbye. We couldn't find things. We couldn't find, first of all, we didn't have people to help us. It was right at the beginning. The phone system was atrocious. We were using cell phones. The cell phones wouldn't work because the walls were very thick. You didn't hang out windows. Eventually, we got our feet going, and we chose, of course, to live in the royal palace. We discovered all sorts of things, which were still here. We discovered not only the art, but also history books. Some of the libraries still had things. We discovered some of the porcelain, the dishes, knives and forks, everything. We made amazing discoveries. And of course, now we have it much more organized and open for the public to see.
Now, one of the things you couldn't find, if I remember right, telling me you couldn't find the kitchen.
Yeah, we couldn't find a proper kitchen. We found a place that had an oven, but we said, that's very strange. It's very small for a palace and a huge dining room next to this place. This cannot be the kitchen. Eventually, we just
would you repeat that? We just had broken up, please.
Okay. We discovered there was a tunnel between the royal palace and a building 100 yards away. And in that building, there was a kitchen, but a real kitchen with stoves, refrigerators, a bakery, every discipline you can imagine. So it's then that we realized that was the kitchen that was supplying the royal palace. We then read that the king did not like kitchen smells, the smell of cooking. And that's why he built it there. And above that kitchen, there were bedrooms, which we turned into the office for us. And that's still the office today. We call it Office B. We have an office in the palace called Office A. But we then upgraded the kitchen in the palace, and then upgraded a kitchen on the first floor, I should say, second floor, United States, for us, for our private cooking. And we installed proper oven, proper microwaves, and all that. So we're totally self-sufficient.
Well, now I do remember when I was there, there's a downward slope from the royal palace to that kitchen area. It's about 100 yards of nice, smooth area. And I do remember your boys doing some skateboarding down that.
Well, I think it was very dangerous what they were doing because, as I said, a 90-yard tunnel, and they would get up incredible speed. And it was decided, no, to stop that because they would crash at the end of the tunnel.
Well, boys will be boys.
Oh, yeah, they were that age then.
Your Royal Highness, you travel extensively around Serbia and around the region, attending many events. Last year, the year before, you and I attended the Halyard mission event. Can you tell us a little bit about how that went and what that was celebrating?
Well, Halyard was this rescue mission, a brilliant mission done by the United States and the Allies to rescue aviators from the United States and the Allies that had been either run out of fuel or they had been hit and their engines were not working. They came down in Serbia, and they were rescued by General Mihailovic's people and taken care of beautifully. I must admit that these people were heroes, taking care of these crews, these air crews. But of course, this was not recognized because at the time, to be very blunt, the United States and the West was spending more time making friends with a communist dictatorship than recognizing the efforts of an old ally. I'd like to remind everybody that my father became an ally of the Allies, including the United States, and he was a guest of President Roosevelt during the Second World War, and the president was very good to him. But unfortunately, Winston Churchill made the decision to abandon my father, and initially President Roosevelt disagreed, but then went along. But let's come back to Operation Halyard. There was an officer who was a military attaché at the United States Embassy who picked this all up and reinvented it, as I might say, and brought the attention to everybody to what happened with this rescue mission. And we both went to commemorate this event, and I'm glad to say that the United States government took part in it. The Serbian government took part in it, and the United States ambassador came there. And I'm very proud that now that we recognize all sides that were part of this great historic mission.
Yes, there were over 500 airmen saved.
Yes.
It was the largest rescue in American military history. And for those who'd like to read about it, the book is called The Forgotten 500. And I think it would be wonderful if more people were aware of that story. Your Royal Highness, you've traveled extensively around the world. What are some of your favorite places outside of your hometown of Belgrade there?
Well, Serbia is a favorite, I must admit. Montenegro is another favorite. But we've had the pleasure of going also to Slovenia, and we were guests of the late President Janez Drnovšek, and he took great care of us. He was extremely sad that the properties there were not returned. He even tried with his party to overturn that act. We spent a week in Slovenia, and that is a beautiful country. We were also guests of President Mesić of Croatia, who took great care of us and organized for us to see Croatia. We've also been to the Dalmatian coast of Croatia, the famous coast, and we've met friends who had yachts there, and we visited these beautiful islands and things like that. We've sadly not yet been to Macedonia, which I'm very, very sad about. We've been very often to Kosovo to see our people there. We would go there every year for Vidovdan, and I must admit everybody was very good to us, and the protection forces, all protection forces took great care of us to make sure that everything was very well. My wife has helped our people there. We've helped the enclaves, which is a great tragedy. Neighboring countries, we have a soft spot for Greece, I must admit, which is only an hour and a half away by airplane to Athens. We go there for vacation. It's beautiful. The islands are gorgeous. We also go over Europe. We go and visit relatives of the royal families. We're invited to many events. We're invited to parties, to birthdays, and sadly there's some funerals. But namely Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, and also Spain, of course. So we maintain the friendship and the connections.
To talking about traveling, you lived here in Washington, D.C. for a number of years. You return each year, I understand, for the National Prayer Breakfast. SALC is trying to establish itself here in Washington. Can you talk about the importance of maintaining relationships with Congress, the Senate, and the administration for this young organization?
Well, SALC, of course, is a great organization, and I'm certain they will do very well with the Hill, making friends. It's so important to make friends on all sides for the benefit not only of SALC, but also the benefit of Serbia. The National Prayer Breakfast is a great event to make friends, not only for members of the United States, but also foreign members. There's some 80, 90 countries that take part, and they include presidents, prime ministers, parliamentarians, and so on. And we've learned a lot, my wife and I, attending every year. We've been going there for years now, and the friendship is strong, and they've even come to see us here in Serbia. So maintaining contact and putting aside political differences is vital.
So once again, a bipartisan approach.
Yeah,
to the
bipartisan approach, which of course is needed from where you are, if you think about it. I mean, we're quite shocked, but still, that's another story, isn't it?
Yeah, we can go into.
Yeah, we can go into that. But it's very, very important for to maintain a bipartisan approach. One of the examples is the National Prayer Breakfast is run by both parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. And in doing so, they get on very well together. And there's a tremendous amount of humor. The friendship is very strong.
Yeah. During your time here in Washington, I know for a fact, because I was with you, that you visited with some of the sharpest critics of Serbia to explain the Serbian situation, the Serbian story. I remember, for example, your meeting with Senator Dole, who at that time was one of the most powerful members, later became presidential candidate, and had been perceived as a critic, but he treated you extremely cordially and listened carefully.
Yeah, Bob Dole was very good, I must admit, to our visit. I like to say that it's so important to maintain friendship with all parties. And when an election comes up, like in November now in 2020, you don't back one horse, you back many horses. If you back one horse, you may end up with no horses at all. So it's very important that organizations, our Serbian organizations, become friendly and back several horses. And this will be very beneficial. Bob Dole it was very interesting, the conversation that we had. I remember saying, you're the great senator of your state, and of course you respect all religions and all nationalities. He said, of course. And I must admit, though, there was no problem for a few months. What we didn't do is have the funds to continue visiting him. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And you've met other members of the Congress and Senate. You've also met our current president
yes,
over the many years.
President Trump from before in New York, and we attended dinners in New York and also in Palm Beach. He's always been very friendly. We've known Melania, we've known Ivanka, his former wife. Ivanka always comes to the charity that my wife does in New York, a Lifeline humanitarian organization. And we've stayed also in Mar-a-Lago. The friendship is there, like the friendship is with Nancy Pelosi. We're friends with Nancy, very good friends.
Very good. Can you tell us a little, you've always been high tech, can you tell us a little bit about what people will find on your website that we have displayed for them?
Well, we just opened, or we launched, as one might say, a new website that was in January. We had some teething problems. We're using WordPress, which is pretty cool. We've also tried we have a video in the beginning which gives us sort of potted history, but it's taking too many seconds to load. It's taking more than 4 seconds to load, when it should be 1.5 seconds. But on that website, there are the biographies, there's a history, there's also a section about Serbia, and also there's a bit about both palaces and the charities too, the links to the various charities. It's an informative website. Each charity has its own website, namely Canada, Chicago, New York, London, and Greece. Otherwise, my foundation for education has a website too. And we're working more on improving the main website, royalfamily.org or royal.rs, in making it really interesting and adding more material to it, photographs and links.
And the websites are multilingual?
Yes, the languages we use, well, it's the same language. We use Serbian, we're using Cyrillic alphabet and Latin alphabet and English. One of the plans is to probably have other languages like French and German. But of course, this will require a bit more funding too.
Very good. Looking ahead into the near future, do you see yourself changing after we come out of this, changing any of your approaches or changing your focus, maybe more on business development or more on healthcare? How do you see your own personal sort of move forward evolving?
Learning a lesson from COVID-19, we have to definitely work on reviving the economy here, which is the case everywhere. It's quite dramatic, but lives are important, and also it's important that those who are of that delicate age be protected also. But bringing more investors here, being more organized, we're certainly going to have to use all our wits after this virus tragedy ends. But we don't know when it's going to end. There are some people who are being totally irresponsible. Luckily, the presidents of Serbia, Prime Minister and the government were specialized advice from doctors, has taken this very seriously, and many lives have been saved, and I praise them very much. Of course, there are many people who criticize this, but I take my hat off to the President for being gutsy and saving the public. And the greater majority recognize this. There are some people who are totally irresponsible. For example, those going to the beach in Florida, and some people going here in parks and things like that without any masks, beating the curfew, beating the quarantine and things like that. So we have to save lives, and also we're very grateful to people who have helped us, for example, the United States, European Union, and also we're very grateful to China and to Russia. All these countries have helped us and sent equipment, and there's more equipment that is coming. Air Serbia, by command of the President, has been repatriating people with Air Serbia aircraft, using a big Airbus A330, repatriating people as far away as Los Angeles, and even using this Airbus to bring specialized equipment from China and elsewhere. So very grateful to all the countries I mentioned for their interest and kind help in helping our lives. We hope we can return this sometime in the future.
Your Royal Highness, thank you very much, Kume, for your interview, for the time you've spent with us. On behalf of the Serbian American Leadership Conference, I would thank you, wish you well, you and Crown Princess Catherine well in your endeavors. You have been concerned with and assisting Serbia in both humanitarian, medical, and its economic spheres, and the country should be grateful, as we are grateful here in the diaspora. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Branko. I'd like to say my best wishes to SALC. All the best and good luck when this nightmare ends. I'm certain you will do very, very well. We're so lucky to have such good members, to have friends with such good members as you have. Thank you so much for this very nice interview. It was a great pleasure. All the best from Belgrade.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, next week, the 27th, a week from today, Serbian American Leadership Conference will be interviewing the President of Republika Srpska, Željko Cvijanović, and we will be announcing the time on our website and the various media, so make sure you tune in for that interview. On behalf of the Serbian American Leadership Council, myself, and of course His Royal Highness Crown Prince Alexander, we thank you for spending the last hour with us. Do viđenja.